First, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of CEES and just talk about some video that is going to run for this time when I'm sort of chatting away about logistics. So, introducing CEES. Community Energy for Energy Solidarity is very much reflective of the EU Green Deal having identified energy communities as critical to the just clean energy transition and to tackling energy poverty. But it was very much recognized when the CEES proposal was put together for Horizon 2020 that that quite a few of the systems were not yet in place to allow energy communities to actively take part in tackling energy poverty, or that it wasn't going to happen on a large scale. So CEES is a group of partners that are building up knowledge and experience in both the practical aspects of delivering services to vulnerable households. And if you're unfamiliar with some of the key concepts that underpin CEES's work, we're going to let you read the materials that are going by on the screen about how we define energy communities, how we define energy poverty and energy solidarity, and also about the streams of action that we are working on. So we're investigating, in addition to the action activities, we're investigating policy frameworks that help or hinder such activities. And we're probing the very challenging aspect of how do you finance this kind of work. All of our partners have found that it is very time intensive to both identify and engage with houses in energy vulnerability, and even more difficult to get into their homes and actually deliver these programs and services. So there is a very high human resource cost associated with what we're doing. But the good news is, at the very beginning, we did a survey of energy communities who are interested in working in this area, and of about 100 responses, 85% of energy communities said that they did want to become engaged in tackling energy poverty, but very few of them were actually doing that, which spoke to the need for CEES and the things that we're doing in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of various mechanisms and to evaluate the programs overall that our partners are putting in place, and ultimately to create an energy solidarity toolkit that will help other energy communities take up energy poverty as part of their operations and their mission. So why act? Today we're talking about practical ways to make a difference. And of course, this is what will lift people out of energy poverty. And so it's the critical thing to do, but it's, as we all have found out, there's a whole bunch of steps that you have to do before you're actually going to get into someone's home and be able to help them in really practical ways. We are going to hear from 3 CEES partners who are going to give presentations. We're going to have ZEZ, which is the Green Energy Cooperative from Croatia. We're also going to have ALIenergy. I did that last week too. Sorry, ALIenergy coming in from the northern parts of Scotland, northwest parts of Scotland. Vents.For from northern France. And then we will hear from Kevin Burchell of University of Birmingham, who's going to talk a little bit about how do you evaluate the work that you're doing. We're then going to have a Q&A session after those presentations. And then we're going to we have a feature speaker today who is Franck Billeau from Reseau Eco-Habitat here in France. But Frank is not very comfortable speaking in English, so I did an interview with him and one of his volunteers last week, and we recorded that and have put it together with subtitles. So we are going to play that video recording a little later. And Frank sends deep apologies. He really wanted to be here today to interact with people before and after his video runs, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, he got invited to participate in a last-minute meeting with the department he is working in about substandard housing. So of course he needed to prioritize meeting with government officials over having a chat with us, and I totally support that he did that. I know Frank and I know what he's doing, so after we show his video, hopefully I can answer some questions that you might have. So, yes, again, please do drop into the chat who you are and what you're doing, why you're interested in what CEES is doing. And as the presentations go ahead, please feel free to also add in comments or questions. Sorry, as I said, we will go through the first 4 presentations and then have a general Q&A before I play the video from Franck. And so I am going to hand the floor over to Paula Damaska from Green Energy Cooperative in Croatia. And I'll let you talk about what you do and what you've specifically done in terms of acting for people in energy poverty.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. So I will share my screen now. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for coming. And now I will present you some of the activities that we are doing through the Croatian pilot in context of Community Energy for Energy Solidarity project. So first, a short introduction. I come from Green Energy Cooperative. We've been active for 10 years this year. And we are a social enterprise with various experts from various fields. Most of them are engineers, electrical engineers, while I'm a sociologist. So this project came great, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. Basically, what we do generally, besides conducting EU-funded projects that consider solar energy, renewable energy, energy communities, empowering citizens to take action and to take energy into their own hands through democratization of energy. We also have a turnkey approach in implementation of solar power plants, here in Croatia. And how we do it is that we enable citizens to get to their PVs by connecting them to our network of trusted project designers, as well as installers, as well as PV as well as PV providers. As for our previous endeavors in energy vulnerable households, we have some experience. First project that we did is electrification of rural areas of Croatia using renewables. And through this project, we co-worked with municipalities who co-financed off-grid solar plants for people living until then without electricity in the most secluded parts of Croatia. There are such parts as our country has a few parts that are not so easily accessible, so the infrastructure regarding electricity is also not in its best shape. And the other project that we did was good energy and social entrepreneurship. Here we worked with energy advisors, which is the main topic here today in this webinar. The energy advisors for whom we developed educational materials. One example you can see here is the handbook for energy consultants. In the CEES pilot, concretely, our mechanism that we are piloting in Croatia is basically we're trying to repeat what Enercop is doing with their micro donations model, which we talked about in previous webinars, so I won't go so much in depth here. But what we are collecting money for basically is this energy efficiency packages for energy vulnerable households. They consist of 6 LED lights, door brush, window seal, extension cable, basically everything you can read on this slide to not be repetitive. And then we are educating energy advisors. Here we are basically refreshing some of the educational materials that I mentioned previously on the previous slide. Since those materials were done in 2016, a lot have changed. The smallest of the change being that we converted from Croatian kunas into euros, so everything needed recalculating, but everything also needed recalculating based on the energy crisis and the prices of the utilities going up. What we've done is that once we were in that phase, we went in the activity of setting up open calls for volunteers. The volunteers basically have the job of going into the households that registered for these free energy packages, and there they install the elements of the package in the user's home, while also giving them advice on how to save energy. Here we develop the materials, but also besides the educational materials intended for the energy advisors, we also have a brochure that is part of the energy saving package that goes to the household, to the users who registered, which means that the energy advisors also give advice on how to use their energy efficiently in their household while going through the rooms, scanning the situation, and then giving them the brochure and pointing out everything that they can do in their household to save even more energy. The precondition for these volunteers was that they have a car because they have field work. So from our office where the packages are, they come to collect them and then they go to each household. Also, they needed a laptop with internet, so an internet hotspot also, because part of the visit to the household is gathering information. As you all know, energy poverty is a theme that is not everywhere well covered, especially in the data collection and analysis part, which is basically a precondition to even alleviate and to propose measures that would be tailor-made for the users on that territory. So this is a very, very important part of our visit. So yes, the preconditions and everything was mentioned in the open call. So we went to distribute this open call on two separate platforms. The first one is our CEES website, our official site. We have sub-sites for each project. So this open call was on the CEES webpage. And they had a Google form to register where they had to check that whether they check these precondition boxes, so that I have an overview of how many people I have. Also, I went to Volonterka. That's a platform available here in Croatia for connecting volunteers and volunteering organizations. And it looks like this. So I set it up a profile for Green Energy Cooperative with also, I didn't snapshot here that picture, but also with a separate activity of Is There Troubles campaign, where I put in descriptions for the tasks that they will be in charge of. As far as the educational materials go, we made three separate PowerPoint presentations. The first one regarding energy poverty in EU and Croatia. So basically an introduction to energy poverty, the social supports that are related here, also mentioning the institutions in energy efficiency and energy poverty in Croatia, and the alleviation measures that are proposed in Zagreb, in various other countries, as well as some kind of energy poverty advisory hub indicators and such things. The second module is accentuating energy efficiency. So here we have legal frameworks for energy efficiency, measurements of energy products, and explanation of the calculations, and also tips for saving energy in the household. They're segmented by room and everything that the household can do to lower their bills. The third part, equally as important, is the Is There Troubles campaign. And here we are talking about this project, the context, why we are doing it. The campaign Is There Troubles. and also the visiting of the household, which is the most important part here. So I gathered a bit of, I here try to scrunch what we're talking about step by step in visiting the household. So here they have a one pager. Everything is accessible for them on a Google Drive that I made especially for them. And there they have a section on what to expect when entering a household, because not every household is the same. Some are in worse conditions than others, and they should be prepared to maybe see some situations that they haven't encountered so far. Also how they should division the tasks. So yeah, what's important to say here is that my volunteers go into the household in pairs to protect them, but also to keep safe the registered households. So yes, also to be faster and to be more efficient, as we're all for efficiency here. So yes, one of the volunteers goes and starts to scan the room, starts to put the elements of the packages into the rooms, while the other one sits with the householder and goes through the survey. Also, I explained the brochure to them. Also, I try to motivate them to collect the data on average consumption through winter and through summer of the household. This, of course, is if possible, since most of our users and the registered households are the elderly. Sometimes they forget, or they don't have access, or they're not quite sure about those information. So yes, um, this is good to get, but yes, we can't force anyone to do something. And also a big thing before leaving, that they sign a signature list, so that the recipients sign their names, and that we have an overview of how many visits we made. And they announced that we will contact them by telephone to do a second survey, which we collect data in a time span about 3 or 4 months to see what kind of impact we've made on their electricity bills. What else is administratively important here is that they get a volunteering contract. After they will be done with their volunteering, they will get a certificate of volunteering, and also we've also already gave them the certificate of education, which is here on your right. Yes, here I put up a small video of our activity and what it looks like in the household, but I don't think we have time now for that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you will get the presentations, and the webinar is being recorded, so you can go and check that out a bit later. It's available on YouTube.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Do you have more that you want to say? No. Okay.
No, that's it. Thank you. Here's my email if anything, if anyone has questions or any additional comments.
Excellent, great, thanks. And we will try to put your little video up onto the blog on the CEES website when we feature this particular webinar. So as I said before, we will have a Q&A session at the end of all of the presentations. So now I'm going to take us to Scotland, to the north and western part of Scotland, which where ALIenergy works, and I hand it over to Linda Mitchell to explain to us a little bit about what you have done there over many years, and then what you've done within the CEES project specifically to take action to tackle energy poverty.
Hi everyone, I'll just see if I can share my screen. So ALIenergy is a community-based energy charity. We're based in the northwest of Scotland. And today we're talking about some of our activities and how we deal with the increasing client numbers which happen due to the increase in fuel poverty in this area, and how we ensure the well-being of our advisors. So this is a quick overview of the process that we go through with our clients. So affordable warmth is the term that we use as a rather more sort of positive way of describing fuel poverty or energy poverty. We have incoming clients who come in either by direct inquiries from themselves or through incoming referrals from a large number of referring organisations that we have relationships with. We assess them first for crisis intervention and deal with the crisis if it's necessary. Then we give ongoing support to increase their resilience going forwards. And finally, we onward referral as required to any other organisations that can help them. So this process can be a varying length depending on the complexity of the client's needs. Some clients only have simple problems that we can fix quite quickly. Others have very complex problems that could take a very long time and multiple interventions. So the problem, well, one of the challenges that I'd like to explore in today's presentation is really dealing with this problem of the increase of energy poverty. The number of households that we're working with is really increasing a lot as the energy prices rise and as the weather gets colder. The number of clients contacting us rises as well, just as more people hear of us through either word of mouth or through all of our various referring organisations. And these networks are increasing all the time. So even without the increase of energy prices and the weather getting colder, I think we would still be seeing an increase in client numbers anyway. And this is really difficult to control. We can't really control the client numbers that are coming in, and we can't know in advance how many there will be or the extent or the complexity of their problems that they need help with. So this results in some really busy times, especially in the winter months when it's cold, that there may be waiting times. It's hard to predict how long people might have to wait, but it's common for there to be some waiting times throughout the winter months. And that can result in our advisors feeling very overwhelmed when they have long lists of clients that are waiting. Some of them are very desperate for help. So what can we do about this? Well, first of all, we have to make it very clear to everyone, all the clients, the referrers, the general public, when we're extremely busy, and just to let people know that they might have to wait before an advisor can talk to them. And this is really to help manage their expectations, that they may not be able to immediately talk to an advisor. They may have to have an appointment a few weeks later. We do obviously try to prioritise ones that are most desperate, but there is inevitably going to be a waiting time at some of our most busy times of year. We make sure that all inquiries and referrals come into one central place at our ALIenergy office, whether that's through the telephone calls, the emails, referrals, social media requests, event inquiries, word of mouth, all of them come in to one central place, and they're dealt with by our administrative staff, who then assign them fairly across the team. So where possible, they will be assigned to an advisor who lives closest to them, and that is so that if they need a house visit, there is a minimal amount of travelling involved, and also because those advisors will be most familiar with the local issues in that particular place, as we do cover a very wide area of northwest Scotland. In some cases, a remote advisor can deal with the telephone work and a closer colleague can do the home visit. And this works well because all of our client details and all records of our advisor actions are recorded on an excellent client management system, which means that it is easy for an advisor to step in and take over from another advisor if it's necessary to do so. And then we will give a first telephone session to all of our clients' inquiries. And this is where an advisor will ask questions about the property, about their heating system, how they pay for their energy, details about the household, their employment, their income, their benefits, any vulnerabilities, etc., and to really gain a full picture of the client's situation in the first place, what their immediate needs are, and what support they require. And on the basis of that information, we can then decide whether a home visit is offered. So a house visit will be offered if it's needed. We simply can't offer a house visit to every single client because there are too many of them, and therefore we triage them in this way. We'll offer the home visit wherever it is needed most. And that could be due to a communications need. It could be because a client needs to be shown how to use their heating controls, or they need help reading their meter, or they need help to just sit down and go through their bill, to complete paperwork, to complete evidence for applications for grants, etc. And this can then be followed by longer term follow-up on the telephone as required on the back of the information that we've got from the house visit. Another thing we do in order to minimize the amount of time spent traveling to clients and speaking to clients is that we do post a lot of information and fact sheets on our website, so that some people can simply go to our website, find the information that they need, and they can act independently if they're able. And if that isn't enough help, then they will call us if they need support. And in these ways, we are really ensuring that the time that our advisors spend with clients is the most effective, and the time is spent with the most vulnerable clients who need help most. And I want to talk a bit about advisor wellbeing, because often services like this are all about the well-being of our clients, which of course is the purpose of the service, but we have to look after our advisors. First and foremost, if our advisors can't function well, then they aren't able to help anybody. It can be a very stressful job. They are under a lot of pressure, especially at these very busy times. Dealing with desperate people day in, day out, dealing with other people's problems, can be a very tiring and very stressful way of working. So we need to make sure that we look after them. We have a Teams live chat, which is running all the time, where our advisors chat all the time. There's always lots of activity on that chat every day. So every time any of them have got any sort of query or comment, or anything at all, really, it doesn't have to be a serious thing. It could be a small funny thing, or just a cry for help for anything at all. That live chat is always there for them, and it's been very well used. We also have a weekly catch-up every Tuesday meeting for all advisors to go over anything that's come up for them in the week. And then monthly, we have a face-to-face gathering for everyone. And these advisors are spaced out over a wide area, so they are remote working quite a lot. So once a month, we come together. We have a day together with a face-to-face meeting, work in the office, and then that's usually followed by an informal dinner. We also have time set aside for specific wellbeing sessions, and we share wellbeing resources amongst the team. And these sessions are not presented as optional. They are presented as a very integral part of the advisor's timetable. They're very important for everyone. Even the ones who seem to have no problems may have problems that they aren't sharing. So these wellbeing sessions, we make sure that we encourage all of our advisors. We need to keep an awareness of any specific trigger issues. There are many, many issues that are faced by our clients, and in some cases, our advisors also have certain issues which may be triggered by certain problems that clients have. So it's important that managers and team leaders are well aware of these potential issues, just so that they can spot any problems before they get worse. But despite all of this, advisors do often find it difficult to give up their advice time to do things for their own well-being. And this can lead to overwhelm and burnout. And so continuous monitoring of staff well-being is absolutely essential. I think that is the take-home message, absolutely essential. The advisors must be looked after. Without them, we can't run the service. So I will finish there. That's my contact details there on the final slide. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Linda. I think that's a topic that we haven't covered or haven't seen covered very often by other organizations. So I'm really glad that you brought it up and brought it to our attention. All right, our third presenter today is Sabrine from Les Sept Vents in northern France. And Les Sept Vents has a very interesting renovation strategy in that they use it to build community at the same time as making people's homes more energy efficient. So Sabrine, if you are ready to go, you can.
Hi everyone, I am Sabrine Bougemin. I work at La CEEES Partners in France since 3 years almost. And our main subject is energy efficiency in buildings. We are a France Rénov point of information in our department, La Manche. It's situated in Normandy. And our main work through this France Rénov space is to give advice to people that are willing to do some renovation work in their houses, or do some heating system change or energy production change. And we give them advice about the best parts to do as work, and about how they can have some aids from the regional council, from the territory, and from the national schemes. So we, as an organization, are a collective interest cooperative organization. And this means that it works with the democracy, and all the people working at Les Sept Vents have their words to say about the functioning of the cooperative. We are almost 30 members working on energy subjects, more than what I just said. So we work also on building conception, on citizen energy production, and many other subjects. We estimate that every year we have around 4,000 first contacts of people that are interested in some renovation work. And from these 4,000 contacts, we have around 1,000 first appointments in person with the people. It's estimated that in 22 years of this public service mission, we have impacted around 25% of the people that are living in this department. So in the context of the CEES project, we had to train our energy advisors to recognize what is energy poverty. And this was a big challenge for us at the beginning, because as a France Rénov space, we have as a public target people that are mainly in medium and high income households, and we can't say that they are in social poverty. So we had to understand how the meaning and definition of energy poverty can be applied to our audience. And this has led to big questions. Do we just stay on numbers? Because the people that come and ask for advice, they have to show their last year's income and the taxes they had to pay. And sometimes between the last time that they had this income that is taken in that is taken as a reference for the aids that they can have, their situation mostly have changed. Some people come here after having lost their job or after having changed in family situation, sometimes health situation. So what we have on paper is not always representative of the real situation of the household that we are going to work with. So we had to find a way to make this definition more simple for the energy advisors, to make them able to apply them when they work with these households. And we had also the challenge that energy counselors are overwhelmed with work since a few years, especially since almost 2 years, because the national policies about renovation, about the aids are changing. The organization and the national agencies responsible of this have changed also. And we had to find ways to make energy advisors have time when they have this first contact to ask the people about their general situation. And this has led to some time and some lag in the beginning of the project. The energy counselors weren't able at the beginning to apply this definition, and we had to find time to make some internal workshops with them. And I can say that it took almost 4 months to have the first results. So we are happy that the 4 months had passed before the beginning of our experimentation phase. And now the energy counselors just come by themselves, saying that, yeah, we have some households coming here that are going for a big renovation, and we have the numbers about the consumption estimated for the house now, and it represents more than 10 or 15% of their income. So we think that we can just consider they are in energy poverty. And we start after this the work with them to find if they are going and willing to try and have 3SR, so supported and shared self-renovation. And we are not the most, I think we are not the most interesting experimentation about this in the CEES project, but all the return of experience that we have is really interesting to us, because it just shows the limits of the national schemes that we are depending of, and the way that we organized ourselves in our organization to adapt to these national schemes. And this has led us to work more with local partners and to try and develop some tools that are to play a role of intermediate space between their work with more socially poor households and our work as energy considering main point in the department. So it's still work in progress, and we hope to share this experience later during next year. And if you have some question, that would be really welcome for us, because all questions help us, I think, since the beginning of this project. So thank you, Marilyn, and thank you for all the presence here.
Thanks, Sabrine. As your presentation was a bit short, I want to take the time to ask you directly to explain to people who might not be familiar with Les 7 Vents just a little bit about how 3SR works.
3SR is supported and shared self-renovation. So when you want to renovate your home, you always, or most of the time, just try to find some professional to organize the work site. And the self-supported self-renovation will instead use your own competencies and social contacts to try and find some volunteers to come help you, and to try also to make some parts of the renovation by yourself. And this practice is really developed and welcome in rural areas, because especially since the COVID crisis, then the Ukraine, because people just couldn't find some professionals to come. The agendas were full for many months, sometimes years, and people had to find some other solutions. It's also a way to act against the social exclusion of people that are in energy poverty. Because, for example, the association we are working with on our local territory has this local exchange system that makes people go for helping another household before trying the volunteer day renovation at their own house. And this has as an impact, first of all, making people create new social link with their neighbors and people from other cities. And also, I think it's one of the most important impacts. It makes people know what it represents as work, time, and investment to go for renovation work. So the associations, and it's not only in our territory, but elsewhere also in France, they do this so people just know what they are making, where they are making their fit in. And it always has a good impact. Some people just find out that they can't go for this work, so they will have other solutions. But many people just get more motivated and have better view of what is doable and how they can invest their time and energy in their own renovation. Yeah, so this is more about this. And at Les 7 Vents, we don't do this work because we are mostly energy counselors. But we have worked with the local partners on the 3SR practice to know what it can give as teachings for the national scheme policymakers, and how you can integrate the work that is done with this in the aid schemes, and also how you can facilitate the insurance of this kind of work. So that is what we are still doing with the CEES project. We hope that this will give more clarity to our partners and to the authorities to make this more possible for other households.
Great. Thanks, Sabrina. It was really helpful for people to better understand the system. And I did participate in one day, and I can tell you it's a very rich experience. We are now going to hand the floor over to Kevin Burchell of University of Birmingham, which is responsible for evaluating the whole CEES project and evaluating the activities that the CEES partners have been doing in order to determine what should go into our final energy solidarity toolkit. So Kevin is going to talk about how we actually evaluate the things we do to help alleviate energy poverty. So Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And thanks to everyone for attending today. It's great to see everyone. Well, not see everyone, but it's great that you're here. Yeah, so I realize that there's lots of expertise in the Zoom room, and there are lots of different kinds of ways in which you can approach the challenge of working on energy poverty. So I'm going to mention some ideas for evaluation, but always with the view that there are other ways of doing things, and also that adjustments would need to be made depending on the specific context. So yeah, I'll offer some ideas for kind of objectives you might want for your evaluation of this kind of work, some questions that you can ask about this kind of work, and some methods. And I mention this every week. I do have a slide deck of broader principles for evaluation, and Marilyn's kindly making those available alongside these specific slides. So in this instance, our simple evaluation objective might be to understand the processes and the impacts that are in this particular mechanism, an act or an alleviate mechanism. And we do this, largely to improve the mechanism, to prove how we're doing things, and to share that knowledge as well, of course, in the case of CEES. So there's a lot on here. So, but the principle here in terms of understanding the process is the same as it has been in previous weeks, if you were here. So we ask up front, what are the plans for these activities? What kind of events were planned? What was the content of these interactions? What training was planned? And then we ask what successes and challenges were experienced in the implementation of these plans. And we can also ask what responses to the implementation were made, and then it becomes a kind of an iterative thing. We can also ask here about experiences. Experiences might be part of the impact, but they might be part of the process. And I've mentioned the householders here, but we might also want to ask about the experiences of the trainees. We might, when they're trainees, we might want to ask about the experiences of the energy advisors once they're trained. And we're interested in developing more effective, more efficient processes for the future by asking these questions. So if then we switch to impact, so that there are a number of different sources of information here, a number of different audiences for these kinds of questions. The most obvious one, perhaps in this context, is what are the impacts on households? And this, of course, means what are the impacts on energy poverty? And this gives me just a little bit of an opportunity just to share with you the definition of energy poverty that we're using in CEES. I won't go into it in too much detail, but just suffice to say that it focuses on two things. It focuses on access to affordable energy services, and some have been listed there, and it focuses on the elements of human flourishing that are underpinned by those energy services. So health and well-being, kind of relationships people are able to have, social inclusion or exclusion, and various other aspects as well. And these actually give some really good clues to the kind of questions you might want to ask of people in the context of understanding the impacts of the work. So, but then of course we can also ask about the impacts on trainees in terms of learning, confidence and capability, and the same for any local partners that might be involved in the actual delivery of the projects. I think we've talked about local partners a couple of weeks last week in the context of finding people in energy poverty, but often, of course, local partners are involved in the delivery as well. And finally, of course, what are the impacts on your own organization in terms of this work? How has the organization developed and so on? And then finally, just a few ideas about methods. And this is really where there are many ways to do these things, but these are the sorts of things that we focused on in CEES. So the first, I think most importantly here in this context of the households, the impacts and the experiences of the households. And I think it's important to say at the outset here that this is a very challenging part of any of this kind of evaluation, particularly because of the vulnerabilities and the situations of the people who projects will be working with, people in energy poverty. So it's challenging, and the 6 teams, pilot teams that we've been working with have done amazing work on this. Nonetheless, it has also been challenging, and so that's also, it's important to stress that. Yeah, we've worked with surveys to understand impact, and so we did a survey before and a survey after, classics evaluation design. And we've also done a survey to understand how people have experienced the events, the actual interactions. We're doing surveys with the trainees, but discussions with them, interview type discussions with them are also going to be useful as you go. And you might also, sorry, can I just say one more thing about households? And this is really in the context of the work of laissez-faire and 3SR. I think surveys are really good when you've got the numbers, when you've got quite a few households going through projects. Obviously, in a renovation style project, the numbers are much smaller, and surveys might not be the best ways of getting at that kind of information. Interviews may be better, and interviews are always great if you can do them. We weren't able to do them in CEES. Yeah, and so I think discussions with project delivery teams and the management teams is really useful here. We've found it very useful, and with your local partners, if that's possible. That hasn't been so easy for us to do in CEES, but we do have a survey actually for the local partners. So I feel like it's a real whistle-stop tour. So apologies if it leaves a lot of questions unanswered, but there's a lot to think about this morning. So thanks very much. There's the email addresses of Rosie and I at University of Birmingham, if you'd like to get in touch. So thanks everyone. I'll stop sharing now.
Great, thank you, Kevin, for insights into how to evaluate the actions that you're taking to tackle energy poverty. So we do have a few minutes now that we can open up for question and answers for the presentations that have gone so far. Is there anybody who would like to either pop a question or comment into the chat, or just open up your microphone and make Nina? I'm glad to see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I'm Nina Campbell, Energy Wellbeing Advisor, previously based in New Zealand, now in Europe. So it was really exciting for me to hear a bit more detail about those projects. I'm particularly excited about the 3SR approach, where people are actually engaged in the renovation of their own properties with their own communities. I'm really keen to learn more about that. But I actually had a question that arose out of Paula's presentation. Also really interested to learn more about the approach of using volunteers to deliver the service. And I can see some great potential in that, in terms of sort of humanizing the conversation between the householder and the advisor, maybe stepping it back from an overly technical sort of conversation. But my question is, are there challenges in training people presumably don't have a background in energy efficiency or building science, training them up to the level where they can give reliable, authoritative advice to the households? And then listening to Jennifer's presentation made me think, and what about the well-being of those people? Are you finding that any of them feel like they're in the deep end, or are they coping and enjoying the work? So sorry if there's too many questions there, but anything you can say really to that conversation would be great.
Well, since our energy advisors are working with the households that obviously have low social status and financial status. We don't go into that much technical details with them, especially for they're also elderly. So we just provide them with the information on an everyday basis in their everyday life, how they can change their either behavior in use of electricity, water, and gas, either who they can turn to for some annual services and checkups to make sure that all of their devices are running smoothly and do not take up more energy than they should if they're working properly. So those are, I wouldn't say basic information, because not everyone obviously knows them, but they're understandable. We don't go that much into detail into kilowatts and some measures and etc. We're keeping it lighthearted in the sense that it's understandable and it really does connect to their everyday habits. But in educating the energy advisors, we do go into a bit more detail. For example, what comes to my mind at this moment is going through the bills. So in the household, we ask the question whether they understand their electricity bills, their water bills, or their gas bills. And if they are not so sure about it, or they don't respond with yes, absolutely right away, we do go through each element of the bill with them. So here we do go into a bit detail, but this is more in an administrative way than a technical way. So we do get that connection between your bill and what you're doing in your household, which I think is essential for this energy advising. So yes, I hope I answered your question, but yeah, just to come back to the energy advisors profile, those are mostly young people who are fresh out of college, so they do have the capacity and the pre-knowledge to understand this educational materials. They're not too heavy, but they do also have opportunity to ask anything that isn't as clear as they would like it to be, and we do have a whole uh, set of engineers here in-house in the Green Energy Cooperative for anyone who wants to know more. And yes, this is basically it.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, Nina, we didn't go into it that much at the beginning, but there's a real distinction here between the soft measures and the hard measures, and the kinds of things that the energy advisors that Paula was talking about and Linda's were talking about are typically going into households and helping people understand how to use their energy systems or how to do things that are a little bit more efficient, whereas what Les Sept-Ventes is doing is much more in the hard measures, where they're actually going in and saying, we're actually going to renovate houses. So I think, there's a real distinction between who's an energy advisor and who is an energy efficiency building renovation kind of person. I'm going to give Kevin the floor super quickly, and then I'm going to move on to our presentation because it's going to answer a whole bunch of questions for you, Nina, that I think you want to do. So Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks for the question, Nina. The broader topic of the kind of skills that are important here, it's a really important one, isn't it? And obviously technical skills are important. I think, it's been said before, and it's coming through very, very strongly in CEES, that social skills or soft skills, put it another way, are just as important in this kind of work. And it's really important, therefore, to have, to recruit the kinds of people to do this work who have those kinds of skills. And I know that, I've had a really good conversations with Linda about, how you can sort of bring those skills out so that you can see them in advance. Yeah, the technical as well. Yeah, very interesting topic.
All right, I am going to switch now over and give the floor to our presenter, who's not actually here, but did take the time to have a chat with me. And he's going to refer to the household of Benoit in his presentation, so that you'll be able to have a bit of a sense of that. But the reason I wanted to give Franck the floor today is because he does go into great detail about how difficult it is to carry out these large-scale renovations and really the human resources that you need in order to do that. I just want to tell you that I spent a day with Franck a couple of years ago. It was before COVID, so 3 years ago at least, visiting one of the households that he has helped. And I have to say, this is in a town that's about an hour out of Paris, and I have to say it was pretty shocking to see the state of houses that some people live in.
Bien, bonjour, Franck Billeau. Donc, je suis le fondateur de l'association Reseau Eco-Habitat et je suis accompagné par Jacqueline, qui est bénévole et qui a repéré et accompagné un certain nombre de familles en grande précarité. En fait, on a créé Reseau Eco-Habitat il y a un peu plus de 10 ans, suite au fait que j'étais salarié au Secours catholique et que je constatais que 25% des aides financières consacrées par le Secours catholique, association caritative, servaient à payer des factures d'énergie pour des gens en grande précarité. Alors que des dispositifs d'aide à l'amélioration de l'habitat, il en existe. Mais je constatais que pour des personnes très modestes, en grande précarité, donc qui vivent sous le seuil de pauvreté, imaginer de faire 50 ou 70 000 euros de travaux, ça leur paraît impossible. Or, il existe des dispositifs, des tas de dispositifs pour aider des personnes à faire des travaux. Le problème, c'est que ces dispositifs sont tous plus ou moins complexes et assez inaccessibles pour des personnes qui, comme Ginette, en fait, n'a pas d'ordinateur chez elle, est seule, vit dans un logement très dégradé. Donc, aller chercher entre 10 et 12 demandes d'aide financière et de remplir en fait des tas de dossiers administratifs, ça lui paraît en fait impossible quand on voit tous ces dispositifs. Et même si elle était, si elle avait accès à ces dispositifs de financement, aujourd'hui, l'organisation de ces dispositifs contraint en fait Ginette à aller chercher elle-même des entreprises du bâtiment pour faire des devis et intervenir et faire des travaux. Et Ginette, qui a en fait 70 ans sur la photo, en fait, être confrontée à des entreprises du bâtiment qui parlent tout un langage en fait technique. Donc, on voit bien que sur le terrain, il y a 3 types d'acteurs qui coexistent. Alors, Reseau Eco-Habitat, en fait, finalement, n'est que en fait, une coordination entre des gens qui ne parlent pas la même langue. Donc, les bénévoles de terrain qui parlent le langage du cœur, les dispositifs de financement qui nous permettent de financer entre 90 et 95% du financement des travaux, et puis des entreprises du bâtiment, des fournisseurs de matériaux, des industriels qui peuvent aussi contribuer à la réalisation de ces travaux. Ce qu'on constate, c'est que pour permettre à ces familles donc très précaires de faire des travaux, c'est qu'il faut absolument en fait les accompagner de bout en bout. Ça va du repérage, ça va de préparer en fait chez elles le fait d'imaginer que c'est possible de faire des travaux de rénovation énergétique. Donc, il y a tout un climat de confiance pour leur permettre de se projeter. Il faut que le programme de travaux en fait corresponde au bien-être de la famille. Donc, on va pas on peut pas faire seulement de la rénovation énergétique si on prend pas en compte que la toiture elle est aussi fuyante. Donc, on va faire un programme de rénovation qui soit global et qui ait le plus d'impact possible sur la vie de la famille. On va aller chercher, bien entendu, tous les financements et les entreprises qu'on va en fait accompagner pour réaliser ce programme de travaux. Et bien sûr, on va suivre les travaux avec un accompagnateur technique qui va permettre en fait de rassurer la famille sur le fait que les travaux sont bien réalisés et qui va rassurer aussi l'entreprise qui, elle, parle un peu technique. Et donc, on va la rassurer notamment sur les financements ou sur les choix de matériaux. Et bien entendu, l'accompagnement peut se poursuivre avec le bénévole qui connaît bien la famille et qui va en fait poursuivre l'accompagnement bien après les travaux, parfois même dans l'usage des nouveaux équipements dans le logement. Alors, pour repérer ces familles, ce sont des familles souvent qui ne sortent plus de chez elles parce qu'elles ont honte de leur logement, donc elles vivent un peu recroquevillées chez elles. En fait, on permet aux bénévoles, j'allais dire, de développer 4 sens pour repérer ces familles en situation de précarité énergétique. Donc, en fait, c'est d'abord apprendre à écouter les personnes, ce qu'elles peuvent dire dans des permanences locales. J'ai froid, mes enfants dorment avec des chaussettes, je me plains pas, mais je suis frileuse, ou il pleut dans mon logement. Donc, apprendre en fait à regarder des maisons, regarder des façades, regarder des fenêtres, regarder quand on rentre dans le logement des systèmes de chauffage défaillants, regarder des installations électriques. Donc, le fait de regarder et se dire c'est pas normal de voir des choses en fait qui sont très dégradées dans les logements permet d'appréhender en fait des situations de précarité énergétique. En fait, parfois, il suffit juste d'utiliser son nez, son odorat, pour percevoir en fait un problème de qualité d'air intérieur dans le logement, mais qui peut être aussi lié à des moisissures, à l'humidité dans le logement qui peut être mal ventilé. Et puis, utiliser ses mains parce qu'en touchant une fenêtre, en touchant un système de chauffage, en touchant parfois des murs écaillés, en fait, on peut comprendre que qu'un bénévole est dans un logement très, très dégradé. Ce sont des signes qui permettent en fait de comprendre que des personnes sont en situation de grande précarité énergétique. Et donc, voilà, on va les amener, en fait, on va amener ces personnes à faire des programmes de travaux qui soient cohérents, qui soient ambitieux. Et on s'aperçoit que en travaillant sur l'habitat, en fait, c'est un peu comme travailler sur la personne elle-même, parce qu'en restaurant l'habitat, on restaure la dignité des personnes et on voit des gens qui retrouvent une estime d'eux-mêmes. Là, on voit la maison de Benoît avant travaux et après travaux. Et on voit en fait l'intérieur de Benoît. On voit même parfois des gens qui ressourient, des gens qui vont chez le coiffeur, qui retrouvent en fait une estime d'eux-mêmes parce que le logement leur a permis de retrouver leur dignité.
Je connaissais Franck déjà du Secours catholique d'avant. Et puis, un beau jour, il s'est trouvé qu'il n'y avait pas de bénévoles pour une commune. Donc, je me suis proposée pour aider Franck un petit peu dans ses fonctions. Je me suis dit, bon, je veux bien essayer de voir cette famille. Et là, ça a été la révélation. Ça a été pour moi une révélation. J'ai rencontré donc ce monsieur qui vivait dans un état de pauvreté, mais indescriptible. Il y avait des herbes très hautes devant sa maison. On pensait que c'était une maison abandonnée, mais ce monsieur vivait là sans électricité, sans rien, avec sa petite lampe torche, très, très froid dans sa maison. C'était vraiment très triste, très triste. J'ai discuté un petit peu. Tout d'abord, je dois dire, je n'étais pas très à l'aise tout au début, mais en discutant avec ce monsieur, je me suis aperçue que c'était vraiment quelqu'un de très gentil, de très bon et de très honnête, malgré que c'était un petit filou, mais que j'adorais. Il avait un côté vraiment très attachant. Lorsqu'on a eu écho de sa situation, je lui ai donc parlé du Reseau Eco-Habitat, et il a été vraiment très impressionné, et il ne croyait pas du tout, il ne pensait pas que c'était possible. Bon, ça a duré, effectivement. Chose que maintenant je fais lorsque je vois de nouvelles familles, je les préviens tout de suite que ça peut être un petit peu long quand même. Ce ne sera pas fait dans l'immédiat. Il faut compter 12 à 18 mois, des fois 2 ans, mais les gens sont prévenus. Mais là, je me suis trouvée devant des personnes qui avaient un petit handicap, comment je pourrais dire, parce que je ne veux pas être méchante et je veux je vais essayer de m'exprimer le mieux possible, qui avait une petite déficience, vous voyez, dans la tête. Et ça s'est révélé être des gens charmants, mais ils vivaient dans un logement vraiment horrible. On entendait les rats. Cette dame-là ne recevait pas ses petits-enfants. Elle avait un petit peu honte. Elle recevait personne, elle parlait à personne, elle se disputait avec tout le monde. Et quand vraiment les travaux ont débuté, ils n'y croyaient pas du tout. Ils disaient, mais non, on pensait que vous racontiez des histoires. On a fait les travaux et vraiment, ça a été quelque chose de merveilleux de voir ces gens maintenant. Au bout de 3 ans, cette dame m'appelle toujours, m'appelle une fois par semaine pour savoir comment je vais. Vous voyez, il y a vraiment ce côté... Et c'est ce côté humain que j'aime beaucoup en qualité de bénévole. Donc, je me présente. Le fait d'être bénévole donne tout de suite confiance aux gens. Secours catholique, bénévole, les gens n'ont pas peur et vous ouvrent leurs portes parce que sinon, vous avez un certain recul. Ils savent que vous venez là uniquement parce que vous voulez les aider. Nous sommes une association caritative. Et là, donc, mon rôle à moi, c'est justement de les amener à rêver un petit peu parce que c'est un rêve. Pour elle, c'est un rêve, c'est quelque chose qui n'est pas possible autrement.
Alors non, parce que le bénévole, c'est celui qui n'a rien à vendre, comme le disait Jacqueline, et c'est pas non plus un travailleur social. Je dis souvent des gens, des mamans en fait, qui sont seules avec des enfants dans des logements très dégradés, elles ont peur qu'une assistante sociale vienne leur retirer leurs enfants. Et si ce sont des personnes âgées dans un logement très dégradé, en fait, elles ont peur, ces personnes, qu'on les mette dans des maisons de retraite. Donc, le fait d'être bénévole et donc d'être tiers de confiance, et par définition, tiers de confiance, c'est le tiers, donc quelqu'un qui est extérieur, donc qui n'est pas une menace, et c'est confiance. Et la confiance, en latin, c'est avoir la foi ensemble. Mais le tiers de confiance, par définition, en fait, lui seul est amené à franchir en fait les portes du logement et à se rendre compte et à créer cette relation intime avec des personnes. Donc, je dis même souvent que les gens ont plus d'espoir à jouer à l'euro-million un vendredi 13 que d'imaginer que la puissance publique peut encore les aider à faire des travaux. Alors en fait, on sait que, en prenant l'exemple de Jacqueline et d'autres bénévoles, en moyenne, annuellement, un bénévole, il consacre une centaine d'heures par an, donc pour permettre en fait aux familles de se projeter. C'est en moyenne 2 heures par semaine qui sont consacrées soit autour d'un café, d'une discussion pour garder en fait ce temps de confiance, soit pour faire des actes administratifs, aller à la mairie, aller rencontrer l'assistante sociale, recevoir l'artisan qui va faire son devis. Donc si on valorise à 15 € en fait l'heure de bénévolat, c'est potentiellement 1500 € en fait par an de temps d'accompagnement qui est nécessaire pour pouvoir permettre à ces personnes de se projeter. Absolument. Et en même temps, c'est important de reconnaître que cette générosité, elle a un prix, parce que c'est ça qui permet à des gens de se projeter dans un logement et d'avoir moins de problèmes de santé tôt ou tard, à des gens, à des enfants de mieux de poursuivre leur scolarité parce qu'ils vont juste mieux dans leur logement. On a vu des gens retrouver un travail comme Benoît à l'issue du programme de travaux parce que, entre guillemets, ils sont débarrassés du problème du logement et de la gestion du quotidien dans un logement qui ne leur permet pas de vivre en fait humainement. Et le logement est aussi l'image de soi d'une certaine façon. Et si le logement est très dégradé, alors la personne, voilà, ça reflète aussi une certaine dégradation de la personne dans une vie sociale.
Ah oui, tout à fait, parce que Madame Hulot, par exemple, ne faisait plus du tout de ménage. Vous voyez, que vous alliez chez elle, c'était sale, à la limite, c'était sale. Maintenant, vous pouvez y aller à n'importe quelle heure de la journée, elle n'arrête pas de frotter. Elle frotte, elle reçoit ses petits-enfants.
C'est justement cette capacité à prendre en compte que, en fait, la maison, c'est pas qu'un objet technique, et de permettre de construire cette relation de confiance en fait avec des familles. Alors je suis assez optimiste parce que je vous prends un exemple. Quand il y a 10 ans, l'Agence nationale de l'habitat finançait au maximum donner en fait 50% de subventions pour des programmes de travaux plafonnés à 50 000 €. Donc, elle donnait la moitié de 50 000 €. Aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire plutôt le 1er janvier 2024, l'Agence nationale de l'habitat va pouvoir accorder jusqu'à 90%, je dis bien 90%, d'un montant de travaux plafonné à 70 000 €. Donc, elle va quasiment presque tripler son aide financière, mais à condition, conditionnant en fait la situation de précarité des gens. Malheureusement, en fait, la prise en compte du social et du technique, ça reste compliqué. Donc, je pense qu'il y a trop peu de travailleurs sociaux qui prennent en compte l'habitat comme un levier en fait d'accompagnement social, et qui se cantonnent à ouvrir des dispositifs de droit commun ou à des aides financières d'urgence, et pas en fait à travailler sur une solution durable au travers du logement. Et malheureusement, du coup, en fait, cet argent, il y a plein de conditions et qui complexifient en fait les mécanismes. Et ce qu'il nous manquerait en fait en termes de politique, on va dire publique, qu'elle soit européenne ou au niveau national, c'est qu'on crée en fait, qu'on confie finalement l'argent public à des opérateurs qui, en fait, adaptent le financement en fonction des situations.
Et je dirais à plein de gens d'essayer de le faire parce que c'est vraiment quelque chose de très fort. Ça apporte beaucoup. Ça permet de relativiser sur son sort, il faut être honnête. Et ensuite, ça vous ouvre tout un tas d'horizons qu'on ne pourrait pas voir autrement.
I just love what Franck is doing, and the fact that the volunteers, sorry, I'm losing my English words, are so engaged over such a long time. But I also do find it extraordinarily interesting that it takes so much time for a volunteer to accompany a family in severe energy poverty in a super degraded house to go through that very long process. And one of the things Franck talked about when I was able to meet with him a few years ago was that, initially he tried to have his own staff fulfill that role, and he realized that it just wasn't the right thing, partly because it's not the right people. It was, immediately people from his company were distrusted, but also he just couldn't afford that level of time that is devoted to just being with these people who have to go through this very long process and fill out millions of forms. And the other thing that's interesting about his model that he didn't quite get into, but when he goes to a family for the first time, he looks, okay, well, first of all, what subsidies are they eligible for just in terms of renovation? But is there other factors that can be taken into account? Are they getting elderly, and would they be eligible for subsidies to make the main level of their house adapted for, as they get older and they have more mobility problems? Or is there some other aspect of their daily lives and their health and well-being that would make them eligible for subsidies that are outside of the actual renovation schemes? And so in that way, he's able to get to maybe 90 or 95% of the funding covered by subsidies. And then what is super important is at that point, the volunteer can take this person to the bank with all of the documents that Franck has put together and get a loan for the extra 5 or 10 or maybe 15% that is needed to cover the cost of the renovations. And for these people, this is extraordinarily stressful. They've probably never had a loan in their lives. They've just inherited. In Benoit's case, he had inherited the home that his family had lived in for years. And so, he was, as you can see, he's about 45, and he had lived in that house all those years, and there'd never been one thing done to fix it up. So for him to go to the bank and get a loan for 15,000 euros to make up that extra was extremely stressful. And so one of the things that the volunteer did with him is create a budget, which again is something that Franck's company does not have the time or the resources to do, but you need to do that with these people who are in extreme situations, because they're just so far away from where they feel comfortable engaging at any level with society, never mind with with government agencies, as Franck brought up. So we are kind of getting really close to our time. We're about 3 minutes left. Is there people that would like to bring up a point or ask a question quickly?
Just to say that what has been said was so true. It's what we just observe everywhere on the French territory. And there's a lot of experimentations like what they do. For example, there's les locomoteurs in France, in the region of Angers, where they pay people living in the neighborhood to be in contact with people that are in energy poverty. And they have an estimation of the amount of work. It's around 16 hours per month of work. So we are quite the same numbers. And everything was right. The fact that the house is a third skin for the people, and it's really important for their social interactions. And all the things like the fact that after renovation, people will just change their behavior and energy consumption will go up, as we said in our experimentation. But the most important thing that comes to my mind after this presentation is the fact that energy poor households are often not, they just rent their home. So this is a big problematic for the people that are working with them. We estimate in France, it's a number from 2019, that around 45% of energy poor people in France are renting their house. And all these people are afraid to ask for help because they think that if somebody comes and things start to change, the landlord will just make them go out of the house. And we see this in many places. It's general, but especially in Paris, where there's this big stress on housing. So it's a big problematic, and I think it's one of the main subjects where the government has to say a word to protect people that engage renovation work or engage some, they ask for help from social workers, from volunteers, because I don't have the number exactly, but there's a big part of them that just don't do anything because they are afraid of losing their home.
Yeah, I think I would just add on to everything that's already been said on this point about volunteers. I think it's a really interesting point that kind of requires probably some consideration context to context. In some ways, it's quite different from the approach that Repowering London takes, where by and large we try to factor into our projects paying people for their expertise wherever they have it, and that includes, you know, down to paying people to take part in focus groups or in co-design workshops for programs where they're bringing lived experience of fuel poverty. And I think that's kind of something that's been in a lot of ways important to making sure we're embedding lived experience in our approach, but at the same time, the points that I'm hearing about using volunteers as a way to build more trust kind of outside of an existing institution or an existing business, it's a really kind of good point to think about, and I think it's an important one to consider context to context. I would say, you know, I think that community energy cooperatives in some ways have a leg up on that kind of opportunity to build trust already, being, you know, outside of kind of government services, that sort of thing. But it's always kind of worth re-examining our practices on kind of building trust as effectively as we can. And then, of course, there's also this point on, you know, how resource intensive supporting people in kind of precarious circumstances can be, and the fact that that can be difficult to fund if you are paying everyone for their time. And I think that's, you know, that's something that we've really been trying to look at with our CEES project, is how we fund our approach, you know, different models for funding our approach to energy solidarity. And so, there's a couple of really interesting points there to think on about using volunteers. And it's probably always going to be context dependent, but thanks to everyone who's brought points on that.
I was thinking about this exactly a couple of days ago with you, Rachel, with Repowering London, how interesting it is that you do create employment for these people who are bringing their lived experience and who can help you make connections to the communities you're trying to reach. So just to let you know that Rachel gave a longer talk in the second webinar of the series. So if you want to go back and have a look at that, I'm sure you'd be very interested to hear that. And also Nina Campbell, who asked the question a little bit earlier about training volunteers. Nina was our feature presenter in the first webinar, so we will definitely give you access to the links to watch both of those. But just a reminder that we do have one more webinar in this session next Monday at the same time, 1300 to 1430 CET. And this one is going to focus on the support aspect of CEES, which covers both how do you what are the policy implications behind working on energy poverty through energy communities? What are the policies that either help or hinder the work that you want to do? And the second part is, again, going back to the financing part. And for this one, I've invited a quite unusual presenter at the end, which is Secours Foundation India. And I've invited them particularly because they have done so much work. Initially, they were just interested in how can we solve the technical problem and the financial problem of getting electricity into really poor homes in rural areas of India in a way that these people own and operate their own off-grid systems. And over time, they started doing this 25 years ago. Over time, they realized that's the super easy part. And what is much more difficult is all of the ecosystem you need to put in place in order to scale up these quite easy technical and financial models for rolling out energy solutions much more quickly. So we are going to have Nirmita Chandrasekhar and Rashida Misra from Secours Foundation next week, talking specifically about how to build up the ecosystem, which will cover both financing and policy for community energy solutions. So thank you all for joining. We hope to have this webinar up within the next 3 or 4 days, and we hope to see you next week on Monday, the 20th of November. Thanks, everybody.